fine. I'll start off.
Okay. Welcome everyone to this meeting. I'll just put my video on quickly. Perfect. Okay. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. I have received apologies from the Provincial Minister, Minister Mania, and from Member Makamba Bocha. Members, are there any other apologies?
Apologies for David Savage, Head of Department of Treasury, Chairperson, but they will join late because there's a cabinet meeting that's actually running over time, I think.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. So that will be then recorded by our procedural officer. Members, as you all know, we are today dealing with the briefing on the Western Cape gambling. First, what I'll do is I'm just going to ask members to introduce themselves as well as for the officials to introduce themselves because we aren't that many. After that, I'm just going to ask our procedural officer, Ms. Zahida Adams, just to explain to us what the process of the bill was so far. And now with referral, how we got to briefing today. And then what I'll do is I'm going to allow for the department to brief us on the bill. And after the presentation, if the department can also just put the actual bill up on the screen afterwards, just to show how the amendments are written so that the public can also see, because even though we sent all the information to members and even though the information is up online, I just also would like the public to just see how the actual bill is written. And then I'm going to allow for questions and answers. Afterwards, I'm going to allow the members of the committee then to discuss public participation going forward. Members, are you all happy with that? Yes, no, maybe?
Agree, it's good.
Okay, I'm going to assume that is okay. Okay, perfect. Members, if you could just introduce yourselves quickly for the record.
Thank you, Chair. While my microphone is on, it's Andrigus van der Westhuizen, representing the DA in this committee.
Thank you, Member van der Westhuizen.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Dalen Mitchell.
Thank you, Honourable Mitchell. Member Nkondlo, can you hear us?
Afternoon, Chairperson. Can you hear me now? Afternoon,
I can hear you now, Member Nkondlo.
Thank you. Afternoon, everybody. My name is Nomi Nkondlo. I'm a member of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And we did receive the apology from Member Makamba Bocha from the EFF. From the department, Mr. Phillips, are you going to lead us? Would you like to introduce everyone or someone else leading? Just remember to unmute yourself.
Sorry, Chairperson. I'm Anthony Phillips. I will be leading our delegation from the Provincial Treasury for this interaction. And my colleagues will introduce themselves. Doc.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Ndota Nanlea. I'll be part of the Treasury.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Malcolm Boyson from Public Policy Services, Provincial Treasury.
Good afternoon, Claire Horton, Fiscal Policy, Provincial Treasury.
Anyone else? Are there any members from the public or the media online?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hi, it's
Yes,
Astrid Miller. I'm a State Law Advisor from Legal Services at the Department of the Premier.
Thank you for joining us. Okay, if there are no one else, Mr. Master, I see you online, but you're not online. Are you with us still? Mr. Master, are you there?
Yes, I'm very much. Good afternoon,
Okay.
everyone. My name is Romeo Mosso, legal advisor for WCPP. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I am going to hand over now to our procedural officer, just so she can take us through the procedure that the bill has taken, the road that it has taken up to now. And I would just like to remind everyone that our presentation is live on YouTube. And if you would like to have a point of order, please write in the show conversation little chat box or raise your hand. And when we get to questions and answers, I will also use the raise your hand function for questions as well. Ms. Adams, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I'll start at the beginning. The bill was the Western Cape 19th Gambling and Racing Amendment Bill was introduced via ATC on the 30th of January. Thereafter, the relevant role players commenced with the proofreading stage of the bill. And once all the changes were made and approved by those role players, the bill was sent to senior management to commence with the gazetting of the bill. The stage was completed on the 23rd of March. The bill was then gazetted on the 24th of April, and comments were requested with a deadline of the 29th of May. We received 2 submissions and requests for information from Edward Nathan Sonnenberg on behalf of Hosan and Vukani Gaming. Provincial Treasury has committed to responding to these stakeholders. And then the bill was then referred to the Standing Committee on Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism on the 1st of January, and a briefing was requested for today, the 9th of June. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. So as members would know, the comments that was received on the process before it was referred to us has been sent to members. And there has been a commitment from Treasury to respond on those. But since the referral of the bill is now with us, that is a separate process, which is why we are now having the briefing today. Okay, so I will now hand over to Mr. Phillips and his team to do the briefing for us. Thank you. I'm going to switch off my video because I've been informed that my video and my sound is a bit dodgy today. So that way it will just help with the network. Mr. Phillips, over to you. Mr. Phillips, are you there?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. What we're bringing to the committee today is the 19th Amendment to the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Act. There are 2 more amendments actually that's due to come to the committee, which is the 20th and the 21st. The 19th actually just looks at efforts to make the board self-sustainable. It actually does the introduction of a casino operator fee, as well as a limited payout machine operator fee. And it also provides for the accruing of certain fees to the board so that the board can actually become self-sustainable. We've received comments, as you mentioned earlier on, from interested parties to the industry. Some of them actually we've referred to our legal services department, which will actually, we will respond duly in that regard. And we have Ms. Horton that will take us through the presentation on the 19th Amendment Act as we speak for today. We'll try as far as possible to answer all the questions. Those we do not have the answers or where the questions actually require a technical answer, we will do so in writing. Thank you, Chairperson. Claire, can you start off with? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think the structure that we were wanting to follow as actually Dr. Nele to take us through the first set of slides, and then I will take over thereafter. I hope that's in order.
That is perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. Our presentation is divided into 3 parts. We've got part 1, which deals with the problem statement of the funding shortfall for the board. The second part deals with the 19th Amendment Bill, and the last part deals with the recommendations and questions. On the funding shortfall, in 1997, the Western Cape Provincial Cabinet issued policy determinations dealing with licensed gambling in the province. The policy determinations state, amongst others, that the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board should, as soon as possible, become financially self-sufficient. Section 20 of the Gambling Act and the gambling regulations deal with the matters relating to the funding of the board. The board receives its funding through various prescribed fees as regulated in the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Regulations, Fees and Costs 2016. These include new license fees, investigation fees, and deposits. Further, the board has historically received revenue from exclusivity fees, the casino operator licenses, which were allocated to each of the regions for a period of 10 years, for which an exclusivity fee was payable. This period has expired. Similarly, the limited gambling machine operator fees, the Act is being amended. The Act actually also provided for these fees to be paid over a limited period of 10 years. Again, this period is expired. As a result of this the loss of these two revenue streams, the board has become increasingly reliant on transfers from provincial treasury, as the next slide will indicate. If you focus on the that color at the top is yellow government grant, you will see that it has increasingly become larger and larger over time. This is a result of mostly the expiry of those two exclusivity fees. Next slide. If we look at the efficiency comparison of the Western Cape Gambling Board with the other gambling boards in the country, it becomes apparent that the gambling board in the Western Cape has got, for example, expenditure as a share of tax revenue has got the lowest of gambling boards, and also the expenditure, the transfer. Of course, we have already indicated that it has been increasing over the past few years. You can also see in the column on government expenditure. Yes, move along, Ms. Horton. So what we sought to do is to with this amendment is to say that the board needs to become self-sufficient, and which is actually a necessary requirement for board to be independent. Creating independent agency is not an easy task and requires, amongst others, providing a reliable source of funding, usually earmarked levies and regulated firms on the regulated firms or consumers. Appropriate funding is essential to determine the extent to which the regulator can carry out its mandate and act independently. For regulators that are funded through fees, an appropriate cost recovery mechanism is essential to set the right fee and avoid a regulator that is underfunded, captured by industry, or undermined by the executive. In this context, the Western Cape government has adopted the principle that the cost of regulating the gambling industry must be borne by the regulated firms. We did a scan of the financial statements of a number of boards across the world, and what we found that in the United Kingdom, for example, in the annual report of 2017-18 and 18-19, they show that that fees such as operator application fee, operator annual fees cover the cost of expenditure of the gambling regulation, excluding the costs related to state lotteries, which are funded separately. In Western Australia, the Gambling and Wagering Commission of Western Australia 2018-19 financial report, user charges and revenues related to restricted cash and special purpose accounts similarly cover the cost of annual costs of the commission. Let's move to the next slide. In terms of the thematic activities of a gaming regulator, we identify three main activities. One, licensing, which deals with processes, which is about processing all applications received from applicants required to be duly licensed in order to engage in gambling industry within the province. Regulation compliance to enforce gambling and related compliance in respect to legislative provisions and regulatory requirements on all license holders who expose gambling and betting activities for public play, as well as the advisory and innovation function, which deals with gambling awareness, promotion of responsible gambling, conducting research and shared regulation and liaison with other regulators. Moving to the next slide, we then sought also to explain the basis of the calculation of these fees. Some of the board's activities can be apportioned to gambling license holders, while others are cross-cutting. Both bookmakers and totalizator have not been considered at this stage. This is because the structure of bookmakers is different and could be sensitive to a possible relocation to other provinces, while the totalizator is in receipt of government levy to assist in funding of horse racing. Both these components of the gambling sector are actually quite small relative to the casinos and the LGM operators. The proposed casino operator fee and the LGM operator fee have been set in relation to the relative contribution to their share of the provincial gambling GGR. And the economic advantages are derived from gambling operators is seen as a proxy for the regulatory benefit that they derive and the proposed. Therefore, we've set the proposed fee as broadly a function of that component. We'll now move to part 2, where Ms. Horton is going to take us through that part.
Good afternoon. As indicated by Dr. Nyere, I will take you through in terms of the aims of the 19th Amendment Bill. Okay, the primary aim of this bill, as already indicated in the introduction, is to make the board self-sufficient. And as the graphs previously have showed, the board has become increasingly reliant on a transfer payment from the provincial treasury. The intention, therefore, is to ensure that the gambling industry remains appropriately regulated and to compensate for revenue loss due to the expiry of exclusivity periods and the loss of the LGM operator fees. The introduction of the casino operator fee ensures consistency with the LGM industry, provides for the introduction of a casino operator fee to be paid in perpetuity. The fee is calculated by inflating the exclusivity fees to its present value, and this was done by using the rate applicable to debts owing to the state. And the proposed casino operator fee is structured as follows in the table below. So in terms of a casino development where the value did not exceed 175 million, the proposed rate is 2.805 million annually. In the case of the casino development exceeding 175 million, the proposed rate is 7.150 million per annum. We anticipate for the gambling board to generate revenue of approximately 18.370 million from a combined amount from the 5 casino license holders. Secondly, The bill provides for the deletion of the 10-year limitation on the payment of the limited gambling machine operator fees. Similarly, this fee was inflated to its present value by using the rate applicable to debts owing to the state. The fees broken into 3 different categories. The first category is to be imposed on a route operator who has less than 500 machines in the province, and the proposed rate is 1.953 million. Where the route operator has between 500 machines and does not exceed 1,000 machines, the proposed rate is 3.9 million. And where a route operator has more than 1,000 machines out for play, the proposed rate is 5.858 million per annum. It's anticipated, given that the province currently only has 2 route operators, and that those route operators hold just below 1,000 machines each, that's the revenue that could be generated for the Gambling Board from this fee is 7.8 million rand. The last thing that the bill tries to do is, in terms of these current fees that are collected by the Gambling Board but paid over to the provincial revenue fee, that provincial revenue fund, that these fees no longer be retained by the provincial revenue fund but be retained by the board. And it's estimated, based on the pre-audited numbers for 1920, that this amounts to 3.341 million. Okay. Ms. Adams already in part addressed some of the process to date issues, but I think just to recap, I will capture some of the discussion points. The proposals as contained in this 19th Amendment Bill, in order to improve the financial self-sufficiency of the Gambling Board by the levying of various statutory fees in order to partially defray the costs incurred by the board in regulating the industry by reintroducing the limited gambling machine operator fee, introducing a casino operator fee, and providing for certain fees to be payable to the board and no longer to the provincial revenue fund. The contents of this bill was originally published as part of the 19th Gambling and Racing Amendment Bill in 2018 in the Provincial Gazette Extraordinary 7889 of 28 February 2018, which included matters related to the relocation of casinos and matters incidental thereto. Pursuant to the comments regarding the draft 19th Amendment Bill, Provincial Treasury extracted only those matters related to promoting the financial self-sufficiency of the board into the 19th Amendment Bill. The casino relocation matters, as already indicated by Mr. Phillips, will be dealt with in the 20th and 21st draft amendment bills, which have already been published for comment. The bill was published by the Western Cape Provincial Parliament for public comment on 2 May 2019. However, as a result of the dissolution of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament on 4 May 2019, as per Rule 2092 of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament Standing Rules, dated March 2019, all business before the House or any committee lapses when the Provincial Parliament's term expires or when Provincial Parliament is dissolved. Provincial Treasury therefore once again requested Cabinet approval to introduce the bill into the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. In conclusion, or making a recommendation, the Provincial Treasury recommends that the Standing Committee facilitate the passage of the 19th Amendment Bill, which is aimed to promote the self-sufficiency of the board. The benefits of a well-regulated gambling industry accrue to the citizens of the Western Cape, the industry, and the provincial fiscus by helping to protect punters from unscrupulous illegal gambling sites, protect the market share of legal gambling sites, support innovation at the board, and to protect the gambling tax revenue for the province. I thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Horton. Can I just ask, can the department just please put the amendment bill up on the screen for us? Or if you don't have it, then I can always ask the procedural officer to put it up for us, just so that we can show the public what the amendments look like. Okay. So let's go down a little bit. So the first page is obviously where it was published in the Provincial Gazette. Let's go to page 2. Let's just stop there quickly, just so that for the public and for members as well. So when the words are in bold, in square brackets, it indicates omissions from the existing enactments. Let's quickly go back up. I just want to explain because not all members from the public understand how bills are drafted when we are dealing with them. And then that little line there is for words underlined with a solid line indicating insertions in existing enactments. I know I'm being a little bit tedious with the details, but just for the public, let's go down. We can go down to the objectives. Okay, so there we start with the first section. And then there's the second section, which is an insertion. Let's go down. I think we skipped page 3 accidentally. Let's quickly go back up. Can we quickly go back to page 3? Okay, then that is an amendment there. Let's go back down. Okay, let's go more down. We can go down to the bottom. There we go. We missed section 4, I think. Clause 4. Can we just quickly go a little bit up to clause 4, please? Not the memorandum, the actual clause. A little bit more up. That's clause 5. Is someone able to just go a little bit more up so that we can see clause 4, please? There we go. Amendment. Okay. Then we can go down to the memorandum. Go back down now to the memorandum. We've seen the short title and the commencement clause already. And go a little bit more down. Is someone able to go a little bit more down for us to, okay, there we go, perfect. So just for the public, for those who don't know, we always have memos with the bills that are gazetted, and then that basically explains the different clauses. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. We can take that off the screen then. But it is also online for those who wish to view it, and members have also received it. It's also under the Files tab of this MS Team for those who wish to access it. Okay, members, I'm going to allow for questions now. Member Nkondlo, okay, any other hands? Okay, I'll take Member Nkondlo first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple of questions to the department, just for my own clarity of the bill. One, I just want to understand that when I listen to the presentation and I read, it gives an impression, and they must correct me if I'm wrong, that since the board, the Gambling board's establishment, it has actually been running on a financially unsustainable business model. Is this the case, based on what they have presented? Because my understanding of this 19th amendment, specifically as it was explained, it's considering that particular issue of trying to usher a more sustainable business model. So firstly, it's just to understand, is that the case? And if it is that the case, what has been the engagement of the department with the gambling board in particular that gets to be contracted, you know, and assuming is that part of that contracting is ensuring really financial viability and sustainability of the operations. That's the first one. I think I hear the benchmarking done, you know, with the other countries and more, I think your developed countries in terms of, you know, the feasibility of gambling as a business. And I hear, I think in the part 2, the proposed, I'm not going to speak more of that because I don't have much technical know-how in that regard. And I'm sure we will be assisted by the views that will come from the people that will be affected in terms of the proposals that are there. The question I want to raise in that regard is that if one, against the benchmark of the European countries, if one just look at competitiveness in the South African business and gambling environment, including the fact we're talking in a space where, you know, and they've considered the type of, you know, or revenues that margins in the gambling sector that is now juxtaposing that in terms of the Western Cape and other provincial environments. So that's the second question I'm interested to be educated on around the proposals that are being made. So I think those are the two, Chair. I would like to pause at this point. Thank you.
No problem, Honourable Nkonle. Are there any other members that would like to ask a question before I put it to the department? Going once, going twice. Okay, I have questions. Honourable van der Westhuizen, I hear you.
No, I'm saying I'm happy, and thank you to Honourable Mkondlo for her questions.
No problem. Okay, I have a few questions that I would like to add then. So I just would like to understand from the department, it speaks to the renewal of previous fees, this particular bill. And on the one slide, it spoke about the reintroduction of gambling operator fee. And then it also spoke about the introduction of the casino operator fee. So I would just like to know is the gambling operator fee and the other one, if you are a casino, does that mean that you pay both? Or is the gambling operator and the casino fee for two different types of institutions? And then I would just like to understand, because it speaks about the expiring of exclusivity fees. So just for clarity, does that then mean that you're essentially just moving the fund? So instead of the fees being paid to the province, to the actual department, for example, and government treasury, that the fees then be paid to the board instead. So then there will be no transfer between the two anymore. And then I would just like to find out if we could just get all of the research that you relied upon. I see that you've made some notes of the different countries and it's the references list as well. And in the last slide, I think, of the first part, it spoke about that the reason that bookmakers and totalization is not included is because of possible relocation to other provinces and different structures. as well as the fact that that will be dealt with in the 20th and 21st amendments, which is also coming to us eventually, but has not been referred yet. But could you just please explain specifically what you mean by possible relocation to other provinces and different structure? And then in part 2, Ms. Horton, you spoke about the calculation based on the value of casino development. Now, I understand that the different parts have been separated of how many machines you use, for example, or the different values of the development, for example. But I'd just like to understand how did you decide on, okay, under 500, above 500, and so on? And then lastly, the last slide spoke about innovation at the board, which it will encourage. And I would just like to understand, what does that mean? How will this bill assist with the innovation at the board? And those are my questions. I know that there are quite a bit. Honorable Nkondlo, I see your hand again.
Thank you, Chair. One small question I forgot. I just want to check, because here we are focusing on, trying to increase revenue collection of fees in this space. Is the issue of illegal gambling, a consideration of how that capital outflow, of the industry can actually also be responded to? And I know, Chair, one of the things that you had picked up, I think, in our conversations even last year, was the issue of pigeon racing, which is also not part of the gambling, because I think that's another revenue stream that I'm not sure whether, as part of the fees, looking at increasing fees, but I think broadly speaking, from a financial sustainability, you also are looking at how you can close out on spaces where you are losing money due to illegal activities, but also maybe some of the gambling activities that are not necessarily currently regulated. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlo. Yes, I do remember them also speaking about pigeon racing and pigeon gambling being two different things, but I don't think it's being addressed in this particular bill. But if there is any information, I know also the board did indicate to us that they would be investigating that particular sector as well. But Mr. Phillips, please, if you could engage us on these questions.
Yeah. There's quite a few questions, but let me just maybe start off, and I think Claire will answer and jump in as well. I think just to understand the history of how the industry works actually from a casino perspective. So the province has been given 5 casino licenses basically, right? And those actually has been actually, in terms of the policy determination, actually be assigned to different districts within the province. The biggest one of which is in the metro, and that actually relates to Grand West or Sun International. And then you have casinos basically in Golden Valley, which is in Worcester, one in Caledon, one in Mossel Bay, and then one on the West Coast. So those actually was assigned actually, but before they were actually licenses were given, actually there was something called exclusivity. So exclusivity fee, a bid fee, actually for operators actually that would want to locate to a specific geographic space, given the economic environment in which that space are, paid an exclusivity fee, a bid fee, and exclusivity fee, and that actually made sure that the board was sustainable. But that was actually for a period of 10 years. The industry then came back after 10 years and said, look, we are contesting this thing in court, and therefore there's been actually almost a cessation of the exclusivity fees. And those are the elements actually that would have made the board, or had made the board in the past, a sustainable model. Then the issue around benchmarking. The issue around benchmarking relies on the income, the location, and it's stratified basically based on that. Like, for example, Claire actually raised the issue around if it's the income of the GGR, basically, or gross gaming revenue, is more than 175 or less than 175 million, it actually fell in a different tax bracket or chargeable rate. At the same time, also the number of LPM limited payout machines actually also determined in terms of what the rate were with regard to that. So in an essence, actually it dealt with the issue around exclusivity, or at least the privilege to trade from a certain geographic space. And as we could see from all of these things, actually, that the biggest advantage was actually to locate your casino in the metro, given that 72% of the population actually goes there. And obviously, coming back just to the issue around illegal gambling and the oversight. So ideas actually that, you know, that we have a board that actually makes sure that the gambling industry is accountable, accessible, and also making sure that we do not overstimulate gambling, given that within a province, actually, we could actually easily fall ourselves into problem gambling. So the idea behind the board is actually to regulate the industry so that we do not overstimulate or we do not have an abuse of one on the other, actually, with regard to that. And then I think Claire can talk about the research as well as the issue around the innovation. And then obviously the issue around the relocation of a second casino to the metro is dealt with in the 20th and 21st Amendment to this Act, actually, which will actually look at the introduction of one of the 5 casinos, actually another one of the outlying 4 casinos into the metro. Claire, can you just maybe come on the research that we relied to and also the issue around the innovation that's currently actually looking at the board in terms of how they want to run their business?
Okay, thank you. I'll just speak then to those 2 issues. What was done is just to look at a comparison in terms of how other boards are funded. And the international norm is for the industry to pay for the regulation of gambling. So that was just the 2 references were made in terms of Australia and as well as the United Kingdom. And it was just referencing those, but also in terms of the principle, in terms of the industry or the self-regulation being paid for by industry. The other thing, so that's just making reference to the sources used in terms of international literature. With regards to the question, I've forgotten what was the question. In terms of innovation question, I think it's important to realize that we've got, and I'll also address Advocate Bartman's question in terms of are they being expected to pay both? Now, these are aimed at 2 different segments of the gambling market. We've got the casino segment of the gambling market, which is the majority of where the gambling taxes and the annual GGR is generated. Then we also have, which is accounts for approximately 2/3 of our taxes, which come purely from casinos. But then we have an important segment which has shown quite a strong growth over time, and that's the LPM, or the limited gambling machine segment. And that's the market where you can place a bet of up to R5 in a machine, and the maximum payout that you will get is R500. Okay, so those are the two critical gambling sectors in the Western Cape. As the committee will know, the province has not yet rolled out or made a decision with regards to the rollout of bingo. So the province does not have bingo currently. So we restricted in the sense that we have the limited payout machines, we have the casino industry, we have the bookmakers that take books on, most of their revenue comes from sports betting, as well as we have the horse racing industry governed by or run by the totalizator. So this bill aims to address the 2 fees that we're looking at in terms of casinos, as well as the limited payout machine segment, which is the majority of where our majority of gambling activity in this province takes place. So in terms of innovation, and that speaks to the last point of the slide, we have revenue collected by the board through the cost and fees regulations.
Apologies, Ms. Horton. I'm just quickly going to mute Mr. Phillips. Sorry, Mr. Phillips, because there's a bit of background noise. And then Ms. Horton can continue. Thank you.
So the board gets its revenue from the current cost and fees regulations, which impose various fees, administrative fees on the industry, on the entire industry. And these fees are inflated on an annual basis through an amendment to the regulations. These would actually largely cover most of the operational activities of the Gambling Board. So as was indicated at the beginning of the slideshow, the board is primarily responsible for licensing of applicants. So you need to undergo certain probity investigations with regards to the suitability of somebody who wants to operate licensing or gambling in the province, and also the suitability of staff that are involved in the industry of gambling. And that's quite a key function in terms of doing the necessary probaties. But there's also an important regulatory component that the Gambling Board is responsible for. In other words, to ensure that those operators that have licenses adhere to the various rules and regulations that govern gambling in the province. So to make sure that compliance audits are done, that tax audits are done, etc. So that would be a compliance function. But the board also has another function, an important function in terms of its oversight, not only of the industry, but also in terms of providing education to the broader society in terms of responsible gambling. But it's also responsible for identifying areas of innovation. As the committee can, I'm sure, appreciates, the gambling industry is one that's very much technologically driven. There's lots of innovation that happens that's driven by casino operators, LPM operators, etc. And the board needs to keep pace with these technological developments and also look at innovative ways of regulating or providing consumer protection. So an example of this that the board is currently looking at would be an example of innovation is in terms of player card mechanisms, where you can regulate or help to assist people who have problem gambling by enabling them to predetermine how much they would like to spend on gambling activities. So these are all new things that we would regard as innovation. Also, the board has a function in terms of liaising and being up to date with innovation, whether it be within South Africa by speaking to other gambling boards and seeing what they are doing, also in terms of innovation in terms of an international front. So what we're also arguing in this presentation, there's certain expenses that the board is responsible for or incurs in terms of doing these functions that need to also be covered by industry or through the regulation of gambling. So that's the innovation things that we were talking to, and by ensuring compliance, proper licensing and innovation, it will all plays a direct role in terms of minimizing, I would never say preventing, but minimizing illegal gambling to the extent possible. And that is not only obviously to the benefit of the ordinary citizen in terms of protecting punters or gamblers from illegal gambling activities, where there's really no oversight in terms of payout rates, etc., or even being paid out if they make a winning, but also in terms of protecting the fiscus, because obviously if somebody's gambling on an illegal gambling device, that would be revenue lost to the fiscus, but also it protects the industry itself, because the industry obviously would not want to be competing with an illegal component of the industry that's not paying taxes and not contributing in any other format. So it serves also to enable the board to do its regulatory function and ensure oversight and the proper management of gambling in the province. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to see quickly if any questions were missed. Okay, I don't see any questions that were missed. Mr. Phillips, sorry, you wanted to speak?
Hi, Chairperson. I think my head of department just want to get into now. He joined us late, but I mean, he's just want to actually maybe expound on some of the explanations, probably.
No problem. Welcome, Mr. Savage. I thought maybe he was coming in just to do oversight over his colleagues. Mr. Savage, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good afternoon to committee members. Firstly, apologies for being late, joining the meeting late. I did join during the presentation, so I have heard the discussion, and it's always useful. I wanted to maybe just add to some of the responses, some of the questions from yourself and Honourable Nkondlo as well. In terms of the fiscal sustainability of the board, has it ever been unsustainable? That's not the case. It's just that the financing model that has been used, it de facto has emerged over time, as the data has shown, was not, in our view, sufficiently supporting the independence of the board as an independent regulator in this space. And as the presentation had dwelt on, the independence of the regulator is very important in this in this space. So it's introducing a self-financing dimension, which is a direct payment to the board, and a transparent mechanism at that. In terms of the affordability, we do believe that it is affordable for the sector, and desirable, in fact, that it pays the costs of its own regulation in a transparent manner. It is, of course, too early to tell the full economic impacts of COVID, and this legislation predates and will live beyond the current national disaster. So that we don't believe is going to fundamentally alter the importance of the amendments as proposed. In fact, I think that my colleagues had addressed the question of illegal gambling. While it's not a direct focus area of the 19th Amendment Bill, it's obviously something that's always borne in mind. And of course, a strong independent regulator that is adequately financed is obviously critically important for tracking down and responding to compliance issues in the sector. We would, of course, be more than happy to share reference materials with the board, with the committee, and we'll do so immediately after this session. I think that dealt with the remaining question. Oh, I think there was one question to do with particularly the exclusion of totalizers and bookmakers that was addressed in the presentation. But perhaps we could ask Ms. Horton to just take us through the detail in that respect. Obviously, broadening the base is something from the provincial treasury we are always interested in. But there are specific issues to do with the mobility of those particular operators in this space.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. Ms. Horton.
Okay, thank you. I'll just speak to the two issues in terms of the bookmaker and the totalizator. The totalizator, who is responsible for the hosting of horse racing events, needs to fund those horse racing events, and they're quite an expensive activity in terms of the hosting of horse racing. And I forget now the year in which it was decided, it was some time ago, there was a decision taken for all the provinces, across all the provinces, that a share of the gambling taxes that the bookmakers received for accepting bets on horse racing events, part of that tax collection from the punters would be paid over to the totalizator to assist with covering the cost of hosting horse racing events, given that the totalizator bears the sole expense or cost associated with hosting a horse racing event, while the bookmakers bear none of those costs and simply can accept bets on those events. So the order of that magnitude of that funding in terms of the transfer that is then paid over by the gambling board to the totalizator, I cannot remember the exact number, but it's in the order of approximately 18 million per annum. So at this stage, it would be perhaps a bit counterproductive for us then to be paying the totalizator X amount of money and then to impose a new fee in terms of that. So that's the reason why it's not considered at present. With regards to bookmakers, we have quite a few bookmakers in the province. and bookmakers are a little bit more footloose in terms of where they are located, or can be located. So obviously a casino is a physical structure. It can only be located at one physical site. Similarly, an LPM machine is a physical structure. It's wherever it's located, whether it be at a bookmaker premises, whether it be at a nightclub, etc. It's a physical site, and hence one cannot just up and move the offering. However, a bookmaker can relocate or be located outside of the province and accept bets taking place from countries. And hence that's why it doesn't mean that one doesn't intends to exclude them. It just means that one needs to follow different terms of having additional. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, are there any follow-up questions or any other questions? Going once?
None
Going
from my
twice?
side.
Honorable van der Westhuizen? None? Okay. Okay. If those are all the questions, I just want to find out, is Mr. Master still online? Just want to make sure that if there are any comments from legal from our side. Shame, I know Mr. Master was trying to reconnect earlier as well. Okay, if he's not on, then that's fine. Anything else procedurally from the procedural officer?
No, Chair, nothing from me.
Okay. We will then move over to the members' discussion regarding public participation, to the department and the HOD. Thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you for answering all of our questions today. And we will speak to you soon.
Thanks, Chairperson. Thank you.
No problem. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you very much to all the members.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to quickly wait for the department to leave. Okay, members, we need to now discuss the public participation. And I'm going to ask that the procedural officer assist me here. Let me just get to logistics. So I would like to put the following to the members as suggestions. And if you have any suggestions or would like to change or add anything, please let me know. So the first thing I would like us to discuss is the advertising in newspapers. So we're going to have to advertise to say that this bill from us as the committee, WCBP, is now open for comment. So I would like to suggest that we put advertisements in the following newspapers: in the Cape Times in English, in the Cape Argus in English, in die Burger in Afrikaans, in the Vukani in Xhosa, and in the Mail and Guardian in English. I also would like to propose that this advert then requests interested stakeholders to submit comments, written comments via email to the procedural officer for us to consider, and what to use a WhatsApp similar to the Division of Revenue previously, where people can then use voice notes and include the details and submit that to the procedural officer for us for consideration. And that we then in the advert ask that if anyone would like to make an oral submission, that they should please indicate to us to do so. Because at the moment, there's no real indication of how many people would like to be part of a public hearing. And I've been informed that it's up to the committee also to decide whether we're going to do an oral submission public hearing, how many of them we're going to do. And with COVID currently, it's difficult because we can't physically go out and have a public hearing because we don't know if more than 50 people are going to pitch up, given that us alone, the WCBP staff and the department, might even make up already about 20 people. So I would like to suggest then, once we've received the comments in either email or via voice notes on WhatsApp, that at that particular meeting then we go through them and we discuss dates and how many public hearings we would like. And then if anyone has indicated whether they would like to make an oral submission, that we then allow the procedural officer to contact them and say, this is what the committee has decided in terms of public hearings. Are you available on this or that particular date? Then further, I would like to suggest that we put a voice note out that we send to radio, which we will then request WCPP, the communication sector, to help us with this. And I suggest that we place the written advert, the one in the newspaper, after today's briefing, 1 week after today's briefing, and that we allow the period of submission to be from the 16th of June to the 31st of July. That will then give stakeholders and community members about a month and a half to comment. And that is essentially that people can comment and put in their comments. And this is separate to the previous comment period of the Gazette from the department and WCPP, which was extended as well, an extended period so that people have enough time to make comments as well, comments of which we have all received. And then I would also like to suggest that the procedural officer then also send invitations to stakeholders based on contact details from the stakeholders that we receive from Provincial Treasury and from the board, that we send it then to all the municipalities and business chambers, and even questions of the companies, for example, that have already made submissions. Yes, and then after that, once we've received everything before the public hearing, I suggest then that the presiding officer then makes all of the voice notes, messages and email comments and requests for oral submissions available to the members so that we can see, and then we discuss at that stage public hearings, and that possibly if we could do public hearings round about the 2nd or 3rd week of August, depending on availability from programming and their input. Members, I'm going to open discussion on this matter now. I know it's quite a bit that I've mentioned. I'm willing to reiterate some of the suggestions as well, or if you have other suggestions as well, please do let me know. I'm taking hands now. Going once. Honourable van der Westhuizen, and then Honourable Mitchell. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair, I presume that it would also be contained in the website of the WCPP, and I believe that we also have a social media presence, and that one can perhaps share the link to the WCPP website address where the necessary details will appear, so that we also cover what seems to be a growing trend in terms of bulk communication, mass communication. That's my. I presume that would be the case, but if not, that would be my suggestion.
Thank you, Honourable van der Westhuizen. I think that's wonderful, and I think we can remind the communications when we communicate with them to just ask that we please ensure that social media is part of that, if other members are okay with that. Honourable Mitchell, you had a hand up.
I did. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the proposals. Chair, I'm in full agreement with all those proposals. Just want to add that normally we would send a particular bill to various stakeholders. Now, I think it's important, especially in light of the manner in which we're going to go about public participation, to rather make it more extensive than less extensive in case somebody challenges the process in court. So if we could just please also, for a lack of a better word, tick that box that all relevant stakeholders that's directly impacted. I don't know, and the procedural officer might be able to assist if there is such a database, but that we include that to your list as well, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Mitchell. That's a wonderful suggestion. I know Ms. Adams has already contact details of some stakeholders, and I know Provincial Treasury as well as the board also have contact details, and we are going to ask them for that list as well. And I was hoping that we can also send it to municipalities as well, so that in case they would like to make submissions as well. Honourable van der Westhuizen, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. You have suggested that we allocate 6 weeks or allow 6 weeks for the comments. Could I just ask, I presume you've looked at the parliamentary program and in that way determined a 6-week window. But could I just ask, do we, in your mind, really need this 6 weeks? Would we be able to perhaps stick to a month and then have give ourselves and the administration enough time to then deal with the input that we may have received? Perhaps you could just say, tell me, because I think one of the hallmarks of a good administration is also obviously that you find the right balance between speed and thoroughness, if I may call it like that, or speed and ample opportunity for people. But 6 weeks do seem to me fairly lenient, and I'm just concerned that we may be more effective or more efficient if we perhaps look at a month. But I presume you made that proposal after having looked at all variables that could come into play.
Thank you, Honourable van der Westhuizen. The procedural officer can assist me here, but my understanding is it doesn't necessarily need to be 6 weeks. It is a long time that we're giving people for public participation, for comments, especially because the previous comment period was also quite long, longer than the usual period. The reason it is also so long is because we also have a constituency period coming up at the moment, and I'm hoping to, as far as possible, not have any meetings or urgent meetings essentially in the constituency period, because by the time we come back, it is mid-July after the constituency period, which is essentially a month if one had to give for public participation. And then, if I'm correct, that next week is the section, I think, that first week is human settlement slot, and then the next week only is us. But I would like to, between the public participation comments that we receive and allowing the procedural officer enough time to compile all the comments and so on, just so that she has the time to do that admin and send that to us so that we can consider it before a meeting. And then after that, to say, okay, we've received 1 or 3 requests or how many requests for public hearings. And then as a committee, we then decide, okay, based on the amount of requests we've received for oral submissions, this is how many public hearings we would like to do virtually maybe, and this is how long we would like to do that. And then for us to schedule it accordingly. But if members would like to suggest an alternative, please do let me know. Anything else? Or if members have more inputs, Honourable Mitchell and then Honourable van der Westhuizen. Honourable Master, are you back? You must just unmute yourself.
No, I'm saying not honourable, but certainly back, yes.
Thank you. Sorry about that. No, it's just we asked if there's any input from legal earlier, but I know you had some reconnection problems, but I'm going to get to you now. I just quickly want to take hands from Honourable Mitchell and then Honourable van der Westhuizen again.
Thank you, Chair. I would hope that Advocate Marcel is an honourable man.
Took the words from my mouth.
Chair, no, I think I hear Honourable van der Westhuizen's proposal and concern, but I would, Chair, with your indulgence, would like to propose that we stick to the initial 6 weeks. It will also provide an opportunity, as you indicated, to provide an input or the compilation from the administration, but also to provide legal to also peruse those in order to advise the committee afterwards. So I think that the 6 weeks is normal practice, if I can call it that. But I mean, I'm open to be persuaded by the administration. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Honourable van der Westhuizen.
No, Chair, I've been swayed. I was just concerned that, you know, we might be putting a lot of pressure on the administration eventually if we did want to finish this in the third quarter of this year. But if we say no, the administration would be able to you know, compile the comments for us and to assist us by putting it together. Then the 6 weeks I would go along with that. So thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you so much, because we must also remember it's not just receiving a voice note, for example, it's also transcribing the voice note so that members can actually read the comments. Honourable Mr. Master, you are becoming an honourable member today. Do you have any comments for us on this? Any inputs? Or you think we're going on the right track here with the public participation?
Chair, certainly, right track, certainly, and the need for public participation is, of course, undisputed. I do know that there's been quite a bit of interest and a bit of hoo-ha, if you like, from certain interested parties and stakeholders as far as the implications of this bill is concerned. So certainly the longer a process of public participation can be, the better. I would like to see the submissions and various feedback that we receive, because from what I've read thus far, there seems to be, and this is what I've read, rationality issues and therefore legality issues in terms of the stated purpose that Treasury is articulating, and whether this bill is the appropriate legal means to achieve that stated purpose. This is what I've been reading. So it'd be useful on the return date of the public participation process to see to what extent those comments are submitted and whether they still hold, and one can then at that time probe it for its integrity on a legal basis.
Thank you, Mr. Marsdorp. I'm aware of those letters that we've received. Those have been forwarded to all members previously, as you've heard, and as was indicated previously in the meeting, Treasury has indicated that they will be responding to the respective comments. They indicated Wednesday, which is tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, to respond to those particular matters. And I have explicitly asked Treasury that they please also forward their response that they do once they do it to the committee as well. But members, if we are all happy with that particular process, is there anything else? Going once? Going twice? Members, okay, if that is all, then thank you so much for today. Thank you for your questions and your interest and for helping with putting all of the public participation arrangements together. And I will see you tomorrow with another briefing. Thank you so much. Goodbye.